This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Waterville City Council. There are agendas available in the file pocket near the entrance or online on the city's website. All items appearing on the consent agenda are voted on in one motion and vote. Generally, these items are routine in nature and do not require discussion. All items listed under unfinished business or new business are voted on separately. First, councilors will be given an opportunity for questions or comments. Once all councilors have had an opportunity to speak, citizens will be given an opportunity for comments or questions. Citizens must speak at the podium and identify themselves. Each citizen will be allowed one opportunity to speak and will be limited to 3 minutes. Finally, the councilors will be given another opportunity to speak or comment. Citizens who would like to speak on a topic that does not appear on tonight's agenda will have an opportunity to do so at the end of the meeting under public comment section of the agenda. And then we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Agenda. Anybody have any conflicts with votes that they're going to take today? All right, seeing none. Manager's report.
Good evening, everyone. I have a few things to inform you of tonight. First of all, the police department has been awarded a $2,000 grant which will pay 50% of the cost of 5 protective vests for use by our police department. We received a check this week from the Harold Alfond Foundation regarding the pool reconstruction. The amount of the check was $1.14 million. And I will be sending them a thank you letter in the morning. The airport and Synergy, the company that's doing the solar farm out at the airport, will be teaming up to clear trees in preparation for the solar farm development. The trees need to be cleared as a result of FAA requirements anyway. And what we want to do is sell the trees to a local lumber logging company, and we estimate that we'll get about $15,000 for the trees. And we'd like to put that money back into clearing the stumps in that same area that is actually around the outer perimeter of where the solar farm is going to go, so that we can mow it in the future. So we'll be back before the council with a request for an appropriation of $15,000, and the money will just come in through the collector's office into the general fund and then go back out to be used by the airport. And a bit of good news, which is my last item here, is that the Lockwood Mill project has started up again. They began work about a week ago. They're in a lead abatement phase, and they'll go from that right into construction, and we've been told that they're not offering any tours of the property until next September, when they expect to have some number of units ready to be shown. Interestingly enough, the management of the company that owns the property said that not even they can enter the premises now because of the lead abatement. You've all seen that the downtown revitalization is progressing. They're working more on the east side of Main Street now. A lot of work is progressing up toward the intersection with Appleton Street, and the 5-way intersection at Spring and Bridge and Water, and you know what I mean. That they've been doing a lot of excavating there and a lot of paving. They're laying in the curb for all of the islands and configuring the traffic patterns now. It's beginning to take shape, and it's beginning to look pretty good. That's what I have for you tonight.
Thanks, Steve. Can I get the approval of consent agenda?
So moved. Second.
Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Council Green has a question.
Council Green.
Go ahead, Councilor Green.
I think there is, we need an adjustment to the minutes. I believe there was, there were some nominations last meeting to the ARPA committee that didn't appear in the minutes.
Which would have been Paula Raymond, Colleen Madigan, and Jennifer Johnson.
okay.
Move as amended. Second.
Now can I get a roll call back?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yep.
Council Green,
Yes,
Council Foss.
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Moving on to unfinished business. Order 221, 2021.
Claude.
Oh, sorry, Claude. Go ahead.
Before we get started here, Jay, I just wondered if you had plans to put the list of members of the committee. Is that going to be posted on the website, the city's website? And is there a mechanism for ordinary citizens to make suggestions to the committee?
I mean, people can suggest all the time. I think that on our website, all of the committees should show everyone who's on those boards. I mean, we have the Waterville trustees for the water. They're not all on there. They used to be, but I think a lot of them are gone.
I haven't updated this committee as yet because we haven't finalized membership on it.
Yep.
So once it's finalized, I'll post that on the committee's page.
Because, Claude, I'm going to need to add more people because I've got Katie Spencer White who will be joining, and I'm waiting for somebody to get back to us from the chamber.
Okay, no, I just thought that this is an important committee that ought to get a little more, a little bit higher profile, and I just wonder if we can do something about that, and make it easy for people to make suggestions.
Nope, absolutely.
I will point out that anyone that's interested in serving on any committee in the city can go to the city's website. The application is right on the website. And this specific committee isn't listed because we have a lot of ad hoc committees that come and go. So you can just make note in the notes page that your notes section that you're interested in the ARPA committee.
And it must be almost time to do some appointments to some of the other committees, right?
Yes, after the election is completed, then we go through the process of soliciting applicants for vacancies that will come up at the end of the year. So the annual process will start then.
That good enough for you, Claude? For now?
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
I'm going to make a motion to read by title only.
Second.
All in favor?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yeah.
Council Green,
yes,
Council Foss.
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Now back to order 221, 2021.
221. An order providing for authorization to accept and spend federal funding from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, ARPA, Local Fiscal Recovery Program.
Move to adopt. Second.
Any discussion? Go ahead, Councilor Frankie.
Just a matter of detail to put in the minutes. Do we have I believe it's coming in 2 segments, is that right, Steve? And maybe we should list what the different payments are going to be, or the expenditures. You know, just a little more detail.
How much are we getting this payment?
$850,000.
And that's half of it, right?
That's the first installment, and then after that, we'll get another installment. I don't remember how far down the line. About how much? About a year from now, we'll get another installment.
Did you get that, Claude?
And that is actually detailed in the order, in the summary of the order.
Yeah, 874, 393.
Any other questions? Patty, can I get a roll call? Oh, nope. Rebecca came in last minute.
Yeah, I did, because maybe it's just deja vu, but I thought we had a first reading of this.
We did.
We did.
This is the second
Okay.
and final reading of this item.
Okay,
And Patty,
Right.
I think she's asking because it's not marked on,
Yeah.
on the sheet, so.
oh, okay. Right, thank you for clarifying. All right,
Of course.
All right, seeing no more. Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira,
Yes.
Councilor Klepak,
Yes.
Councilor Green,
yes,
Councilor Foss.
Yes.
Councilor Frankie,
Yes.
Councilor Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Moving on to Resolution 223, 2021.
A resolution providing for authorization for issuance of a marijuana cultivation license to Jesse Netto, doing business as Wildfire LLC.
Move to adopt. Second.
Any discussion? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira,
Yes.
Councilor Klepak,
Yes.
Councilor Green,
yes,
Councilor Foss.
Yes.
Councilor Frankie,
Yes.
Councilor Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Moving on to Resolution 224, 2021.
A resolution providing for ratification of collective bargaining agreement, Police Patrol Officers Union.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Steve, you want to tell us about it?
You want a summary on that?
Yep.
Okay, we've bargained with the union to agreement on wages and retirement benefits, as well as some language regarding the chief's ability to select qualified people for promotions. The wage scale that we've come up with fits well with the scale that you previously ratified for the command staff, but it also brings our starting pay up to where we're competitive around the region, and our top step up as well, so that we are competitive with other communities in the region. So we've addressed both the issue of recruitment and retention that you've asked us to do something positive with, and we've done that. The police union has already ratified it, and we're looking forward to your ratification.
Anybody got any questions? Any questions? Councilor Frankie.
I would just like to give kudos to Human Resources Director Green, who did an outstanding job dealing with the various issues in this. Collective bargaining is one of those odd things that not many people are conversant in, and she did an outstanding job. Thank you, Director Green.
Anyone else? Chief, I got a question for you. Even though we're going up, I don't think that that we pay you enough. Can you explain to me when and if you're going to be coming to us looking for a lieutenant that you don't have? I know that we've established that we ask the police department and our officers do a lot of things that go above and beyond what other departments would do.
Yes, as we've discussed, our patrol sergeants, our supervisors do a lot of administrative tasks because we don't have any mid-level management level officers. And so that has been discussed. I've talked about it with the city manager. We'll continue on these discussions, and at some point, I think we need to look at that because, again, our current supervisors, our sergeants, again, take on a lot of administrative tasks, which is really outside their job description. So, yes, I can see that happening.
Thank you. Anybody else got questions? All right, seeing none, Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss.
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Moving on to ordinance 225, 2021.
An ordinance providing for amendment to zoning.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Foss.
I would like to thank the planning board for giving us a very well thought out and written dissertation. We've been asking for quite a while now, and that's exactly the kind of input that we needed to make an informed decision. So that's all. Nice and easy.
Sure they appreciate that. That was a good one.
Yep.
It was easy to figure out why they went the way they did. Councilor Frankie.
Oh, just a quick question about the planning board memo. Does that appear anywhere on the city's website?
It's
Steve?
it's in the agenda packet for this meeting. There's no
Okay,
reason
so,
we
the public-
can't put it on the
so public
website.
can- So the public can see that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, as Rick has pointed out.
Yes, and they'll be able to see it online. I mean, you can.
We'll
put
take
on
care of
there.
it.
Yeah. Steve will get it up online. Anyone else? Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss.
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Moving on to council discussion.
Okay. You ready?
Yep.
We have a number of topics to take up tonight with respect to a series of financial matters that will be coming to the council very soon. Among them are a decision by the council as to how much funding to commit to paying additional compensation to city employees who worked in various capacities throughout the emergency period of the pandemic as declared by the governor. Also, consideration of what other uses of the ARPA money the council wants to commit to before the balance of it is shared for consideration with the ARPA committee. Also, we want to talk about pay rates for some of the vacancies that we are having a great deal of difficulty filling. In particular, there are 2 that I'd like to talk about tonight. We also want to talk about the potential of a citywide revaluation that came up several times during the budget discussion, and when and if that is going to occur is a policy decision that is clearly in the council's realm to decide. So that is something that you want to talk about. We've been asked to look at options for elders with respect to tax relief and maybe general tax relief across the city. We've had little time to do that before this meeting, so Councilor Green was one person who today offered up one suggestion that I haven't had an opportunity to look at, but perhaps she can discuss it when we get to that point. And then finally, we want to talk about the fiscal 22 bond what is going to be included in that bond, and we have a PowerPoint presentation of the capital improvement plan for you tonight so that you can see what elements we're considering to put in the bond. So, to start off, I'm proposing to you, as I shared with you in my council meeting brief at the last meeting, that we compensate city staff who worked through the pandemic at various levels. And the total cost of that package would be $160,000. It includes a general payment of $1,000 to all of our administrative staff, and a payment of $2,000 to the members of our management team who worked on the, who were part of the emergency, can't think of the name of it right now. They worked as part of the team that made all the decisions about how to handle the pandemic internally. And their scale ranges from $2,000 to $3,500, depending on what their role was and the depth and breadth of their responsibilities. In general, all of the city staff would receive some amount of payment. We settled in our team deliberations on this at a $50 per hour additional amount for the hourly workers, and as a result they will all get no less than $50, but depending on the number of hours that they worked, they'll get varying amounts. The top amount for the hourly workers is $2,800, and as I said, the bottom amount is $50. That includes all of the election workers, and we're calling out for special compensation the city clerk and the deputy city clerk, who did an amazing job, as I'm told, handling the election last fall under the circumstances which were very, very extreme. And we're also calling out in a fashion of gratitude from all of us on the management team, the human resources manager, that person that Claude was just giving plaudits to, for her handling of all of the research and the information that she provided on the shifting sands of the state's pandemic guidances. And most of you didn't see what was going on behind the scenes, but we were meeting weekly and probably changing our policy just, with little nudges back and forth, following the guidances every 2 to 3 weeks. And that required a lot of communication out to the employees, and the HR manager handled all of that. She also did all the research that fed the decision making. So with your, without your objection, I'll bring that package to you at the next meeting with the specifics on who will get how much and how it breaks out by department. Just off the top of my head, the police department has a price of about $35,000, and the fire department has a price of almost $60,000, and that's because of all of the extra time that the firefighters and EMTs worked during the pandemic. And as you know, we're running 2 ambulances and a full fire suppression operation, and we're doing it with 15 people, which is incredible. That's one of the reasons they're all working so much time. So if there's no feedback on that, I'll move on to the next topic.
Should I get some, Counselor Frankie?
Just a quick procedural question. If you bring that to us at the next meeting, Steve, do we have to? Can we do this by resolution, or do we have to have an ordinance to issue these? If we want to issue the funds right away.
Well, it's going to be an appropriation.
It depends on the amount. I think it may end up being a council order, which would require 2 readings, depending on the amount.
Yeah, it's $160,000.
Yeah, it'll be an order, 2 readings.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
So, sorry, in this pyramid of money that's going out, you know, where does the clerk's office, how does that fit in, and what scale are they at?
Well, the top payment is $3,500 to the fire chief because of his role as pretty much our medical officer during that whole period, and then at the same time managing the difficulties dealt with by the fire department and the ambulance service.
Yeah, I'm not worried about that. I'm
Okay, the
specifically
clerk-
just the clerk's office.
Yeah, the clerk fits in at $2,000.
The clerk's office, like the people, so the people working in the desk,
The clerk,
right?
the deputy clerk are $2,000 each. The
5 people at the desk.
The third worker that they
I
have.
don't know. how-
Which workers are you talking about?
the people that, like, I go to pay my excise taxes and stuff like
Oh.
that. There are people that smile and say, hi, how you doing? Like, the
finance
people that are, you know, like, talk to me and say, hey, you know what? Like, you're standing 3 feet away from me behind this plexiglass, and
Yeah, they're all
you could get
$1,000.
fucking COVID. So, like, I want to know, like, how much are those people making?
They're all $1,000.
And that's different from a firefighter, police officer in what regard? From
Well,
a pace,
it-
from a scale perspective, just the level of interaction, I think, is. I mean, right? We still had people coming in and day out.
Yeah, we decided that it was appropriate to provide the same amount of additional pay to all of the workers who work 9 to 5, 7, what is it, 8 to 4:30, and that included the front-facing people and the back office people in City Hall, as well as the administrative staff in Public Works and in the fire department. Generally speaking, they were back office people, except for the 3 frontliners at the counter in City Hall. We can revisit that if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's. I mean, you know, certainly, you know, in these elevated positions where people made decisions. I mean, you know, those are the department heads, and that's, you know, in general what they get paid to do is make decisions. It's kind of why we hired them to, you know, navigate us through these things. And we make these decisions, and we have people that sit on the front desk to execute the decisions, whether they are in the room making them or not. And they're exposed to these types of things, and, you know, like, so I think it's important that regardless of, you know, what they do, like their risk that they took during and still take, you know, daily, you know, is compensated appropriately than that of a, you know, a fire department. I mean, they have a different skill level. Their starting pay is a little bit higher to begin with, which is, I certainly understand. However, I mean, like, you know, at the end of the day, the same person that a fire department or a police officer come in contact with on the street can come in and, you know, pay their excise tax, and the same level risk of exposure is there. So to say, well, like, your risk of, you know, your potential for exposure is worth $1,000, thank you very much, versus something else, I think we probably want to look at a little bit.
Well, I understand your reasoning. Let me tell you how we got to that $1,000. We settled on 50 cents per hour as an additional increment of pay. And those folks work about 2,000 hours a year, so we rounded it off to $1,000.
Okay.
It was that simple because we started with a baseline of 50 cents. But if there's no objection from the council, we'll work that thinking into the final proposal.
I'd like to second his thoughts. I would, for those frontline, they should, if they're coming in at 1,000, and Mike, you can agree with me or not, I'd like to see them bumped up to 2,000. They were sitting on the front line, handling what we didn't know back then, and, you know, thin piece of plexiglass separating them. So those three desks should be at 2,000. I agree with them on this one.
Okay, we have one other person that I'd put in that category, and that's the administrative assistant at Public Works, who was the
Absolutely.
greeter at the door.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, go.
I just was curious about teachers who are city employees also.
I believe that because this school is, even though they're employees, it's separate, they got their own allotment of money.
They got more money than we did, than the city side.
Right.
A lot more.
And they've got,
Sort of the same, yeah.
The ARPA money?
And they had gotten
and they've got their own
millions.
board.
Yeah. And they've got their own board, so they've got we can't unilaterally do that for them. But I agree that our teachers who are there putting themselves at risk should also be seeing some of that money. Anybody else?
Moving on.
Yep.
Okay, the next topic is possible other uses of the ARPA money before the ARPA committee is dealing with anything. And what I'd like to bring up with you is that we're facing a housing crisis for the homeless, and winter is coming. We had a meeting arranged by Councilor Green at 5 o'clock this evening with the homeless shelter and KV CAP, talking about the possibilities. And we agreed that we would work together to file an application with the county for funding of some level. It hasn't been determined exactly what that is right now. But I believe, and Councilor Green, you can correct me if you had a different understanding, the scope of funding ranged from $50,000 to $450,000. I think that the city can contribute to that application in a couple of ways. One is to be a partner with these organizations and work closely together operationally so that the different programs that they and we are working with can be interleaved in a way that we get the maximum benefit from them at the least cost. But at the same time, it's I don't think it's unreasonable for the city to step up and front the money for whatever program comes out of this application before the application is dealt with and hopefully funded by the county, with a provision in the application that the city gets paid back for its initial investment. I know that there's some risk to that, and we haven't seen what the proposal is at this point, but we do have a growing number of homeless people who we don't have accommodations for. The hotels are backing away from renting space to us and to the homeless shelter for overflow. And I think we have a moral obligation to do something for these folks.
Is that going to include a heating and cooling shelter?
I can't hear that.
Is that going to include a heating and cooling shelter?
It could. We haven't seen the proposal yet. We talked with the homeless shelter director, who's going to take the lead on this, and I expect that we're going to see a written proposal within probably a week to 10 days. Wouldn't you say so, Councilor Green?
Yes, I believe that was the intent, that Katie said she would come up with something for us to look at in the next 2 weeks. If I could just add a note on the discussion. The proposal is, solving this issue is more complicated than providing a building. And so I think, and I'm hoping that we can have Katie Spencer-White, the executive director of the homeless shelter, come and speak to us, because what she proposed to us today was a combination of funding that would include diversion, targeted case management to support people who are in housing situations, and then also funding for actual, housing. So I think it's a very thoughtful and effective way to address the situation, and I'm certainly in support of this.
Thank you, Councillor Green.
So, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I hope that we're taking a regional approach to this issue, because homelessness is not unique to Waterville, although I will say that often these people end up in Waterville because this is where the services are, but they could come from Oakland, Fairfield, Winslow, any of our surrounding communities, and they have funds available as well. And so hopefully they would work together with us to make sure that this is adequately funded so we can take care of people from all the surrounding communities as well.
Councillor Kleepak, and then Councillor Green.
Yeah, actually, Eric just spoke right to my question that I've been wondering. Is I just wanted to hear some statistics, some numbers. How has COVID affected the problem of homelessness that has been a persistent problem in Waterville? How has COVID affected that? What's the current state of those numbers? And then, do we have a sense of, as the numbers have swelled, do we have a sense of how broad Waterville's reach is? How many of these people are newly homeless in Waterville, and how many of them are from the surrounding, the region around us?
Those statistics are available to a certain extent. We have some of them as the city, the homeless shelter has others, and KVCAP has more of a regional perspective on it than the other two organizations. But we're hoping that those statistics will be used as part of the justification for whatever the program that is going to be proposed will be. On a regional scale, as I said to you at the last meeting, I'm hoping that we can enlist our surrounding communities for that reason to work with us in submitting an application to the county. They're going to have their own interests, and they should, that they're going to pursue on their own. We also want to be working, well, we can't work with we'll work with Fairfield, even though they're in Somerset County, because as you pointed out, this is a regional problem, and we just happen to be the focal point. We're kind of the bee in the middle of the Bruins wheel.
Anyone else? All right, next one. Next item, Steve.
Move on?
Yep.
Okay. Pay rates for new hires. We have lowballed, in our observation and certainly my opinion, two of the more critical positions that we decided to fund for this coming year. One is the fire inspector in the fire department. We've had 3 candidates, I believe, that were interested. One who the chief offered the position to, but who turned it down because he would have been taking a substantial pay cut to come and work for Waterville. At this point, there are no other candidates on the horizon. We've experienced the same kind of thing with the assistant city manager position. We budgeted that at a salary rate of $68,000, which is not much above what we pay our administrative assistants. and it was just too low. We're not getting any qualified applicants, and I'm quite confident that we're not getting the qualified people because they're looking at the budget first, and the budget is posted online. That's what anyone in that role would do to see what the pay scale is, and they're just not applying. So my recommendation is twofold. One, with respect to the assistant city manager, I believe we're going to have to offer that job out at a pay rate in the low 90s. And as far as the fire inspector is concerned, I think that we should make sort of a bold move at this point and create the position of deputy fire chief. That would be a non-union position, assign the role of fire inspector or fire marshal to that deputy, and get that job done, and at the same time provide Chief Essler with the sorely needed backup position that will take a load off of his back and keep him here for much longer than we might otherwise if we keep just dumping things on him. So I'll make a formal proposal on that at the next meeting. And that would be an amendment to the budget, I believe.
Any comments right now? Go ahead, Mike.
Steve, have we gone out and looked at other municipalities that have assistant city managers and what the pay scale is for them to come up with this number? I mean, low 90s is, I mean, I don't know, just, and maybe it was just the way it was presented, just seems like just like spaghetti on the wall. Like, do you have that information? Like, what other municipalities have assistant city managers?
We don't have any hard data on that,
Well,
but
right.
a low 90s pay rate I'm sure would be attractive, and it also fits in our hierarchy of salaries.
Well, I don't care if it's attractive. I want to know what other people are paying, because if it's more than it's attractive,
I will have
I don't
that.
want to pay that. You know what
I will
mean?
have
wanna
that data
understand.
when I come back to you. Options for. Oops. Yeah, let's talk about the options for tax relief for the elderly and maybe citywide. The only information we have at this point comes from Councilor Green, and Councilor, I haven't had a chance to read that statute that you referred to that authorizes the city to establish an ordinance to provide some form of tax relief for the elderly. Can you talk about that?
To be honest, this is something that came to me by way of one of my constituents, and I thought at the time, well, this is very interesting, and I reached out to a couple people to ask if what they knew about the program, and I didn't get anything back, and I will confess I hadn't researched it myself either, but certainly it's something that we should be looking into to see if it can be
Okay.
you know, an effective means of tax relief. So
Doesn't Portland have something similar?
As I recall, the brief headline on it was a form of property tax deferral for elders.
yeah, it's a statute, chapter 908A, municipal property tax deferral for senior citizens.
Yeah.
And so it appears to be something similar to the homestead exemption.
Counselor.
I don't know if if we have, if Bill is still here, if he could speak to it, or someone else who has knowledge. Looks like maybe Counselor Frankie does.
Go ahead, Claude. You're on mute.
I'm not looking at the statute immediately, but I do recall seeing something about it in the Town and Country magazine. I think in general terms, it's a matter of allowing the city to pay an elderly person's tax and take a lien on that payment that would be paid upon the sale of the property or the death of the property owner. It's a little complicated, but it's that kind of thing where the city just pays the tax to itself and then takes a lien on the property. But I'm not sure of all the details that what I'm looking at.
There are a couple stipulations. For instance, a person must have resided in the home for 10 years and they have to be at least 70 years old. And the household income can't exceed 300% of the federal poverty level. So there's some guardrails on it, but it looks like it could be very helpful for some of our citizens who are struggling with their taxes.
And I was just saying to Eric, I think Portland has something similar.
Well, there's been a lot of stories written recently about communities that are about to go through revaluations, including, I believe it was South Portland, actually. And I remember reading these articles, and I think the state, I think 4 or 5 years ago, instituted a new program called the Property Tax Fairness Credit. And I believe that was in response to a couple in Albion that had their house repossessed. And I think there's a mechanism by which we can give tax relief to anybody who qualifies for the state level property tax fairness credit. I wasn't quite sure. Steve and I discussed who should really dig into this, certainly staff, but I thought also it might be something for the housing committee to look into. And this ties directly into the pending revaluation that we're going to have to make a decision about. And I think we want to get out in front of it because we didn't the last time around. And it put a lot of stress on people. And so if there's anything that we can do to provide property tax relief to people who really need it, we need to put those mechanisms in place before we go through a revaluation. So these are things we need to be thinking about now. We're gonna have to make a decision soon. It's almost time to start talking about the budget again, believe it or not. And so these discussions are very necessary, and we're running out of time to get out in front of this and put things in place for the next budget year.
So is that something that you want to hand off to the housing committee?
I guess that was sort of a question for Rebecca, if she thinks that it's an appropriate place for that discussion. It certainly ties into housing, keeping people in their house, making living in Waterville affordable, whether you're a homeowner or a renter.
I mean, we can certainly take a look at it, but I think it would be great to have somebody with some, I don't think any of us are particularly well versed in the law and the sort of state statutes, but we can certainly take a look at it along with other things that we're considering as proposals for the city to help with the housing crisis.
Yeah, I think my thought was that the city staff would put together a sort of a list of what's possible, what's out there, and then the housing committee could dig a little more into it and make recommendations back to the council, and also work with city staff to put some numbers to what, if we are going to put these programs in place, what is it going to cost the city in terms of tax revenue lost and whatnot.
That sounds great.
Councilor Frankie.
I'll take care of that.
This might be something that we might want to liaison with our state representatives since it's a brand new law. See what they actually had in mind.
Anyone else? All right, let's move on to the next topic.
Okay. Next topic is the revaluation.
Well,
to give you a little bit of lead into that, it's been several years since the last formal and full revaluation. And the real estate market, especially, well, in particular, the residential real estate market has gone a little bit wild here in Waterville and around the area as well. We're roughly at about 70% of full and fair value on residential properties. And our assessor tells me that our commercial properties are holding steady in their value. They're not going up, they're not going down. But a revaluation would see a change in the values of various parts of our residential property base. I don't know which ones would be affected more or less. Based on the conversation I had with him today, I had asked him to be here tonight, but he had a city commitment with the city of Augusta. He's on an appeals board there, and they were having a hearing tonight that he had to attend. So the longer you wait on doing a reval, the more impact it's going to have on whoever goes up and whoever goes down. I've learned recently that Bangor does property class revaluations every year, so that they're moving the values around just a little bit over time, and as a result there's never a substantial impact to any particular class of property. I'm told that Waterville has never done that. I don't know that we have the staff capacity to do that sort of thing, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is that it's better to strike sooner than later.
My understanding that Winslow, Augusta, and a couple other towns in our region are also going to be reevaluating next year.
Well,
I think if we're doing things as a region, it might be
the
sort
sale
of a
prices of residential property are demanding that.
Yep. So. Councilor Frankie.
Oh, are you suggesting, Steve, that the recent spike in residential real estate is what has put us up to the 70% level? And is the 70% level, is that not a state statute that you have to revalue at that point?
Yes, that is exactly what I'm saying. We're supposed to be at 100%, but there's a margin of error that's allowed of, I think it's roughly 10%, and 70% is outside that margin of error.
Go ahead, Councilor.
Well, and when we were doing the budget, the tax assessor pulled the spreadsheet. He has a spreadsheet, which I'm sure he has to update, that shows what would happen property by property to the tax, how much taxes they pay. And I mean, even a year ago, some people were going to see a 20% increase in their taxes. And of course, commercial properties are going to see their taxes go down, the same as happened the last time around. And, you know, like it or not, this is the system we have. And if this is the system we're going to operate under, you have to be fair to the people who are participating in that system by assessing the taxes based on the actual value of their property. And you know, the longer we wait to do it, the more painful it will be, unless of course you believe we're in some sort of housing bubble again. But I don't see that being the case, honestly. So this is something we really need to make a decision about soon, so that residents can we can get the information out to people so that they can be aware of what's going to happen next year when they get their tax bills, and they can start making plans accordingly. And also so that we can, you know, back to our previous discussion, put things in place to provide relief to those people who really need it. And I would also point out, you know, this is my 7th year on the city council. You know, and every year we go through a series of tax abatements for people. The city is not in the business of taking people's property away just because they can't pay their property taxes. We always do whatever we can to make sure people stay in their homes, especially if there are extenuating circumstances. Certainly there are cases where, you know, it's maybe an abandoned property and somebody has just decided to walk away from it. At that point, we have to take it. But if it's somebody living in the house, we do everything we can to keep them in their house, because 99% of the time, that's the best thing for them.
Go ahead, Steve.
I'd like to offer just a slightly different perspective on that, Councillor Thomas. Because the property values of the commercial community are not dropping, and the mill rate is remaining the same from one year to the next, their taxes aren't actually going to go down. They'll remain flat.
That's not the case, Steve. Their taxes will go down, because what's going to happen, all those residentials, we're going to collect the same amount of tax dollars. All those residential values are going to go up, so we're going to be collecting more tax dollars from those people. The mill rate will actually go down as a result of that. And the commercial properties whose values stay the same will get a cut in taxes because the mill rate will actually go down.
If the mill rate goes down, that's true.
Right, and if the mill rate doesn't go down, then the residential people are going to get hit even harder than they would if we lower the mill rate.
We agree.
Ouch. Any other questions? Next topic, Steve.
Next topic is the capital improvement plan, and we have a PowerPoint presentation on that, so if we can get a 5-minute recess to set up.
Yep.
So moved.
5-minute recess. Tom, sit down.
I am
Technology.
ready for it.
I think we're ready. Yeah, I didn't get nothing either. No. Not even my boss. What? It was on that trip to China. Bat soup, damn it. Good, Steve. We're ready.
Okay. We put together a presentation for you tonight on the capital plan that we've been talking about all through the budget process, and the finance committee of the council has also been looking at it. The reason for bringing it to you tonight is to get feedback from all of you as to the different elements that are included in the capital plan. We have just a brief description of them that you've gotten a preview of. And we're proposing that the entire capital plan here be included in the $5 million bond that we've been talking about throughout the budget process. There are a couple of wrinkles to this that I'll cover when we get to them, but it's a pretty straightforward presentation. The first item is $50,000 for a strategic plan that will address economic development for the city, bringing in an expert from outside to help us work through visioning and formulating a plan that will be an implementation plan, not just a strategy. This is an important element to our keeping pace with the downtown development, as well as balancing out the tax base so that we have more non-residential property paying taxes and providing jobs, also providing commercial and retail opportunities for not just Waterville, but the entire region. If we do this well, we will attract companies that will employ people. We will help grow companies and start companies that will employ people and add to the quality of life here in Waterville, as well as the economics of the city. The second item is another $50,000 to bring in experts to help us update our zoning philosophy. Not just update the zoning ordinance, but in fact to take a different approach to zoning. Something called form-based code, which is intended to allow a city to design its own future and design it by neighborhood, and pay attention to how the different elements in a neighborhood interact with each other. Focus on the common spaces, what they call the community space, and work with the neighborhoods to identify who they want to be, what they want to be, and work the zoning code around that. This is a philosophy that's been in place for about 40 years at this point, and it's growing in popularity and success across the country. Just a quick example of what a form-based code might produce is in that image that you see on this slide. The zoning that we have right now is called Euclidean zoning. which is based on dimensions, floor area, footprint, side setbacks rather, and lot size. It doesn't address the interaction in the community with whatever's going to be put on that property. And you all know that since I got here, I've been talking about our needing to build a city that is what we want the city to be. The we, of course, is everybody in the city. And we're talking about jobs, we're talking about homes, we're talking about parks and playgrounds. There's a whole array of issues that come into play. The comprehensive plan that the city has now has addressed many of those things with a lot of different action items in it, but from what I'm learning, the follow-through on that has been no better than moderate at this point. So I think we need to take a different tack, and this will bring Waterville's zoning concepts into the 21st century. Moving on to the airport now, we have 3 different projects in the airport. One is $200,000 to upgrade the terminal building, which, as you can see from this slide, if you look closely, has siding that is damaged and warped and is just in need of replacement. The roof needs work as well, and in addition to updating the terminal building, what we want to do is add water and sewer service to the terminal, as well as the let's call it Hangar Alley, which is the offshoot to the southwest of the runway, where we have a number of hangars. At this point, the owners of those hangars are asking us if we would work with them to get water and sewer service there so that they can make more use of the hangars. And we believe and expect that by doing that, we can turn some of those hangars, or maybe some of the new hangars that we're going to talk about, into more commercial operations than just storage buildings for airplanes. Go back to that for a second, please. This expense and the one after it could be funded by the income that we expect from the solar farm that's currently under, we're negotiating with them to get them to the development stage. And we expect that we'll have enough income from that operation to be able to pay for this, these terminal repairs, and the next slide, which is the construction of 5 or 6 new hangars in the red rectangle that you see here, which is between the terminal building to the northeast and what used to be a storage building, which was destroyed in a storm last winter. These hangars would be built by us and sold, but there would be a land lease for the hangar pad, and that would be our revenue stream. And then we would have a lump sum income from selling the hangars as we do. If we have water and sewer service here, we're going to get a better price for them.
Plus, the hangars would be taxable property.
Absolutely. Yep. Yes, sir.
How much call are we getting at the airport for said construction? How much demand are there? How much demand do we have right now?
How much demand?
Take that.
Randy, you got an answer for that?
You're gonna fill it as soon as the doors open?
Yeah, my intent behind this would be to start off with 5 or 6 hangars, fill them, and then the proceeds to build another 5 or 6. We turn down people every day because we don't have hangar space.
The question though was, are you gonna fill them as soon as the doors open?
I can probably get a list of people right off. Yes, that's a possibility.
One quick example of that is that you just approved our sale of, or lease rather, of a hangar pad, which had been just a storage area, open storage for somebody for about 20 years. And we sold that, and the hangar is already committed to, and the party's going to build the new owner is going to build a hangar there, and they're going to operate a business out of that hangar that's going to maintain, they're going to maintain aircraft, aren't they, in some fashion?
Yes, maintenance and aircraft overhaul.
Yeah. So we have an asset in the airport that is beginning to really take on an energy that, you know, is sort of its own doing, and we need to take advantage of that. So we need to invest there. And then finally, the parking lot in front of the terminal building, if you've been to the airport in the last several months, is in pretty rough shape. If we upgrade the building and we build hangars, it only makes sense to do the parking lot as well. That's a $50,000 investment. Then we move over to building repairs at the fire department, and I have to apologize because there's a typo here. That's not $50,000, it's $150,000. The underpinning of the fire department, building, is in rough shape as a result of salt erosion that has filtered in under the floor into the metal subbase of the floor, and it's rotted out a lot of areas. There's been a lot of work done on it, but it needs work, and there's other work that the fire chief wants to do there that hasn't made our list tonight, but it's included in that $150,000. We'll update that list, and we'll have it for the finance committee the next time they meet. In the public works arena, one item here for $300,000 is a dual-purpose Packer truck. It's actually not going to replace an existing truck. We're going to move that truck over to a reserve, and then we'll have a newer truck that we have out on the road and one that's going to back it up. This is something that takes a heavy beating. Not just in use, but in the wintertime as well. It's out on the road every day, and it's driving down the side of the road where all the salt is. I think the mayor can attest to how much work this truck does, and we wear them out. That's what happens to trash trucks. Please.
Point of clarification, you want to replace the same dual packer that's got more air miles than it does ground miles?
No, we're not gonna replace, we're gonna,
It's-
in addition to.
Oh, we're gonna add another one. So we're
Yeah.
gonna have two up on a lift somewhere instead of just one.
No.
Well, can I speak to that, Jay?
Has been a problem ever since we got
So
it.
There's a story there that,
But I will say that the only reason we ever noticed that dual packer
we
is
don't
in
have
service is
another
because we don't have another one. When we had two trucks that essentially looked the same, nobody ever knew when one was down. That's really the only reason, other than routine maintenance and some things that required us for warranty purposes. That truck hasn't been all that bad. I was on it. I used it. Obviously, I don't have to do it every day. I watched how the mechanics of it work. It hasn't been that bad. And you're going to spend just as much money on another truck.
Our entire trash system relies on this vehicle. We would have to completely change what we do with trash and recycling if we switched back to a single packer. And yes, before we had two single bay packer trucks, and if one of them broke, they sent the other one out. So we didn't have to tell the public that something was wrong. And you know, the reason the Packer truck has been down a few times recently is regularly scheduled maintenance. And so right now, if we need to do regularly scheduled maintenance on the dual Packer truck, we have to send out the single Packer truck, which then of course we have to tell people because we can't pick up their recycling in the normal fashion. It either has to go in with the trash or they have to hold on to it. So if we were to not buy another one of these dual Packer trucks, we would have to completely rethink what we're doing with trash.
Do you say Matt's here?
And trust me,
Here?
we discussed
Yep.
every way possible to not
Matt is here.
buy another one of these trucks,
Can
but the
we ask
entire
Matt a
system
question?
is based on it.
Can you bring him in?
So while we're bringing him in, so that means that in the world, we're gonna possess number 5 and number 6. Because when I hit this council, we owned number 5 in the world. Well, it sounds like we're about to buy number 6.
Well, it's been,
No, yeah.
Nobody.
It's been years.
We,
Waste Management's got them.
Yeah.
I mean, not Casella.
they
but
do
like-
now. When we
No.
bought the Packer, there was only 4 or 5 in the United States.
No, I agree. That's not.
And now we're gonna go buy another one.
But we're not buying
That's
the sixth one.
that's all
I
I'm-
mean, there are other people that have them
That's
now.
all I got.
That was several years ago, and I would venture to guess that there's more than one manufacturer now.
Hey, Matt.
Hey,
I got
Mayor.
a question for you. How much more is this vehicle in service compared to other vehicles that we have owned in the past?
Well, I don't have that in front of me, Mr. Mayor. You know, yeah, I can't answer that question, I guess. I don't know how much more. I mean, as you saw firsthand, it does have a lot of moving parts, and as much as it operates, you know, dozens, hundreds of hours more than any other piece of equipment, so it does require more maintenance, certainly.
Do you think you can get us that info for the next time?
Yes, I can look into it. Yeah.
I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
we did. We you know, we itemized each piece of equipment. We have it broken down, so we can get that information.
Thank you.
right, and maybe a history going back to the Packer truck we had before, Matt, about how much we spend on repairs on these vehicles.
Oh yeah, definitely. We can definitely get that.
That was all I had. Thanks, Matt.
Well, and can you
bet.
just speak to the fact that, Matt, if we were to not buy this vehicle and to get rid of the dual packer we have, what would that mean to our trash collection system?
No, you're exactly right. We would have to, you know, we'd have to do a 180. We'd have to do a complete pivot because it is all based on having that piece of equipment to pick up both. Having a second dual packer for, you know, to put our current one in a backup role would give us the opportunity. I can't guarantee right now, also for a 4-day collection week, which is something that I'm very interested in, always have been. But I think that, well, I know that having two of the same machines will give us a good fighting chance at, you know, a 4-day, 8-hour collection week, which I think would make a lot of folks happy.
Counselor Frankie. You're on mute.
I give you a softball, Matt. What's the life expectancy of a Packer? We're talking about a 20, 30-year bond. Is this truck going to last the length of the bond?
No, not even close.
Well, and they won't let us borrow over that period for this type of vehicle. The bonding company is going to look at how long this vehicle is expected to last, and that's how long they're going to let us amortize the payment on that.
And what is the life expectancy of a Packer?
Yep, about a dozen years, 10 or 12 years. That's about all we want to get out of it.
Anyone else with questions for Matt? All right, let's keep moving on.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome.
Stay close. Okay, the next item here is $200,000 for a street sweeper that would replace a 2010 vehicle that has pretty much reached the end of its useful life. Matt can answer any questions that you have.
I don't have any on this one. Anybody else?
I like that truck.
You like the street sweeper?
I like it.
That street sweeper comes out, and I think motorcycles.
Right. Get the sand off the road.
Okay.
All right. That's it. Next. No questions on the sweeper.
Now moving on to our facilities in general, we have put together a plan to replace the heating system, or the boiler actually, in City Hall and convert it to natural gas from fuel oil, which we're using now. The reasons are, A, that the boiler is more than 20, I think it's almost 30 years old, and is getting close to replacement to begin with. But also, there is an obstruction in the parking lot behind City Hall that makes movement of large vehicles, tour buses, trucks, delivery vehicles, etc., very difficult, because it creates an island that gets in the way of maneuverability. And that's where the oil tank is. It's under that island. So if we switch over to natural gas, which we have determined is going to be a little bit lower cost for us to operate. I think there's a 12-year payback on the switch over for the investment in the boiler, and it will solve that parking lot problem at the same time. And frankly, it will give us a cleaner burning fuel than the heating oil that we're using now.
Well, and it also makes sense from a timing standpoint because of the work that's being done on the building next door and the work that's being done in the parking lot. The other building that's replacing the center is going to be connected to the gas pipeline, and they'll be resurfacing the parking lot, so it would be a shame. It's really a time to take advantage of it now, because if there was something to go wrong with this boiler and we decided to put a natural gas one in later, then we would be footing the bill for digging up and resurfacing the parking lot. So, you know, it seems to be, it's proactive to deal with this problem now.
One of those moments of opportunity that we talk about.
Resurfacing the parking lot's gonna cost you more than $100,000.
Right, but they're doing it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a good time. Do you know how much we'll save per gallon versus what we're spending right now?
Not off the top of my head.
And it all depends.
I can get that to you.
It all depends on what happens with the.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
And
on
that-
average, isn't natural gas like $1 cheaper per gallon?
When the pipeline first came to town, it was a lot less expensive than fuel oil, but I think the market has fluctuated, and at various times it's been almost the same price. But you're also talking about a 30-year-old boiler. I'm sure a newer boiler is going to be a lot more efficient than the one that is there now.
Absolutely. Yeah. We'll have the details for you when we sit down and talk with the Finance Committee.
All right.
Remember, this is intended to be sort of an overview.
Yep.
Then we have, moving on to the police department, $106,000 to replace 3 Ford Police Interceptors, the SUVs that we're currently using. This is part of our routine annual vehicle replacement in the department. And a new item here that has surfaced in the last several months, $168,000 for body cameras for the police officers who work in the field, primarily the patrol officers, and I believe that it's going to roll over into the detectives and others. Okay. This is an item that I think I'd like the chief to talk about for just a couple of minutes because he's very passionate about it.
I know we've had discussions on this body camera system prior, and for me, it's really a priority. I don't think I need to tell you, what we see going around across the nation and some of the issues that law enforcement's facing. It's so critical for us to be able to capture what the officer does so that we can go back and take a look and hold people accountable if in fact they engage in inappropriate behavior. But it's just, I think, also provides a confident level to our community that if an officer is alleged to have done something, that we can more than just go back and ask a few witnesses if they've seen anything. We can actually take that footage, obviously, and take a look at it and be able to tell exactly what happened. I think every department in the country, if they haven't already purchased body-worn cameras, are moving in that direction, and we just need to go that way too. There's just no doubt about that.
Chief, where do you store the data that comes from the cameras?
It would be cloud-based.
How long do we keep that?
Well, that's something that we're going to have to discuss with the district attorney's office on how long. My guess is probably almost forever. You just don't know again, how long these are gonna hang out there. In civil suits in particular could drag on for years and years. So it requires a lot of storage. There's no, and that's a big part of the expense. It's most of the expense.
Yep. Storage ain't cheap.
Big cloud.
I do currently have a grant in that if we're awarded that grant, we'll pay about half of that price.
Well, hope you get it. Anybody else got questions for G?
Wait, just to be clear, Chief, this 168, that's for the cameras themselves? So we haven't, or this is inclusive of this cloud?
It includes everything, the cloud, everything. It's all inclusive.
We're using the word cloud. I want to be very specific. You say cloud, you mean a server located in the police department's building. Am I saying that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Just don't want anybody to think that we're sticking it up on a OneDrive for the world to hack into and pull down information.
It has to be CGIS compliance because it's going to be used as evidence in court. So the district attorney would not use anything on there if we did not protect it.
Right.
So that it would meet that CGIS requirement.
The outside world says cloud, and we think that we're sticking it up on a Gmail account
it's
somewhere.
secure.
So, you know, I wanted to get that out there. So, thank you.
We don't want that 12-year-old hacker getting on there. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you. One other feature of these cameras is that they're part of an integrated system that allows for a lot of intelligence gathering and information provision at crime scenes, at hostage scenes, and other active environments that allow the police command staff to understand where their people are and what they're doing. And it's an outstanding system. It's something that if you wanted to do the same thing without this particular system, you would have to assemble a number of different applications that we all know often have difficulty interacting with each other. So this is the right system for us. Moving on to streets and sidewalks. We have $100,000 in the plan to engage an outside engineering firm to come in and assess and update our MSRS maintenance system for roads and sidewalks. They're going to add sidewalks to that, which has never been done before. They had a kickoff meeting just last week because we wanted to get this underway so that we would be prepared with an overall plan for addressing all the roads and sidewalks in the city so that we can begin implementing that plan in the next budget process. Let's move to the south end. We've got $1.5 million allocated to street and sidewalk improvements in the south end. We list 20 streets that are going to be resurfaced, reclaimed, or reconstructed throughout the south end, and 14 sidewalks, meaning 14 streets lengths of sidewalk that are going to be addressed as well. This is an ambitious plan that we're proud of, and you know, we want to thank those councilors who pushed for it. At the outset, Councilor Thomas in particular was adamant that we needed to address the south end, as was the mayor. And we've been so aggressive with our intentions to use TIF funding to do road and sidewalk work that the next slide will tell you that we've allocated $400,000 to, no, I'm one slide ahead of myself, sorry. We've got $318,000 in the capital plan that would be part of the bond that would have $410,000 that's residual funding from a previous year's bond, totaling $728,000 in road work and and sidewalks throughout the rest of the city. We have a list of 12 streets that are going to be addressed, including Marston Road, which is a pretty lengthy road, and a lot of work has to be done out there. This is an expansion of the city's previous program of $250,000 a year in street paving, and we're proud to be doing this. So, given the lead or the stimulus that the council provided when I first started here, I think you can see that we're attacking the issue of road maintenance.
Well, and can I just say something? This is just the beginning, too. We're looking to be very ambitious about catching up on our road and sidewalks. What we've run into is the utility companies are not quite ready for what we want to do, and they really need to be planning 2 and 3 years out. So we've tried to get into a more regular schedule of meeting with them, letting them know what our plans are, and hopefully once they, because they need to put funding in place for the work that they need to do as well. So once they're able to gear up the work that they're able to accomplish every year, we'll be able to gear up and do even more work than what you're seeing here, which is already very ambitious.
Yes, it is. And in order to get them get the utilities to the point where they can fund their programming to keep pace with us, we're going to be fronting $400,000 in utility structure adjustments, manholes, catch basins, water services, etc., in order to be able to go at the pace that we have programmed into our capital plan. It's a pace that we need to address because we're 30 years behind in maintaining our streets, and we can't engage in another 30 years worth of effort. It has to be more in the range of 12 to 15 years so that we're not losing streets in the meantime. And what I mean by losing streets is that they become so in disrepair that they have to be reconstructed from the base up. That typically happens at about 15 years. So one of the things that we want to do with the utility providers is work an arrangement with them where the cost that we're going to incur pretty much on their behalf gets reimbursed to the city over some period of time because we're actually going to be doing work or paying for work to be done on their system. So that is in the works, and I'm sure it's going to come out with a positive outcome. Now on to Parks and Recreation, and without going through the multi-slide presentation that we did at the last meeting, we've got $660,000 for North Street Recreation Area improvements. You've seen that whole scenario before, and it's an outstanding plan that, if we can implement it, is going to make better use of that space than has been in the past. There's going to be there'll be multiple different sports and activities that will occur on this property, which was donated to the city by George Averill back in the 1920s. I'm sure that he and the other funders who have been instrumental in constructing the facilities that are there now would be proud to be part of this plan. And then finally, we have an investment of $848,000 in the Pine Ridge Recreation Area to develop that into a primarily a soccer facility with a softball diamond off to the side. We've included parking and human facilities in the plan, as well as a children's playground. We're also looking now at providing access to this property from the southeast corner, which would come off of West River Road, adjacent to the parking lot for the city's golf course. There's a large open area back there that used to be a dog park, as I understand, And we're exploring the possibilities of creating a parking lot there that would handle overflow or just be an alternative to the parking lot off of Louise Avenue. And that's the end of our presentation on the CIP. The next step, with your feedback, is to take it through the Finance Committee, who will make a recommendation to the council on what should be included in the bond. There's one more slide, though. Before anyone asks what's this all going to cost, the total price is $5,272,000, a little bit over the $5 million bond that we talked about, but if we use the proceeds from the solar farm at the airport to offset the cost of the airport improvements that we listed here, then that price drops by $500,000.
Flavia said she's paying for the street sweeper.
She just wants to ride in it.
Let's do a
Can you go
fundraiser.
back? What about the parks in the south end?
Yeah, what happened to Green Street Park?
It is part of the plan, Steve, right? You just didn't have a slide on that.
It's in there, and I forgot to put a slide in. $95,000, yeah.
And
That's in that total.
Right.
Rian, Anna, and Paula, since you guys are always down there, is there anything that we're missing on those parks?
Are there other parks in the south end that
That
you want to
you would-
see us address?
We've heard of some
Well, if you want to throw in a skate pad and add in another $100,000 to the project for Green Street Park, that'd be great.
I've been talking to Matt about the skate park, and I think we've discussed that it being some sort of like BMX/skate park would make more sense.
I believe everybody knows that there are 4 parks down there. There's the Grove Street, the Moore Street, then Kuchit Field, of course, is considered a park, it's a softball field, and then, of course, the Green Street. Moore Street needs some serious work. It needs to have a playground apparatus for little people. It was designed for that, for the younger crowd. Grove Street has a lot of potential, and it needs the resurfacing. I'm not sure how we'd put that, but the painting of the basketball court area. And again, it needs to be cleaned. I believe Matt said at the last meeting that what was left over from North Street, as far as the playground apparatus, would go to Grove Street. So it's secondhand, but if it's in good condition, I suppose we could accept that. Something that's brought up at our meetings lately is that we seem to be thought of as sort of last, and that's been a pattern of behavior that's happened for over a lot of years. And so it doesn't help. If we can aesthetically start cleaning up the parks, that certainly, I think, makes the streets attractive and people come to them. I sent Matt a picture the other day, a young father with his daughter, actually, because he did put a picnic table. Matt does anything we ask him to within reason. He's very good about that. I can't think of a time that he's actually refused us. He just says it takes time for some things. But he put a picnic table in the Moore Street Park because we requested that. And a dad came with a picnic basket and a tablecloth, and he put a picnic out for himself and his daughter, and they hung out in the playground. And so it does happen. You know, we can attract people, and people do want to be there. We actually had some people who lived in the neighborhood a few years back, brought their little person over to play in the playground, and they were Kobe professors, both of them. And they came back because they liked that little Moore Street Park. So, of course, I'm a native of South End. I'm a fan. My soul is there. We just believe that if all the departments get together and work with us, which everybody does to a certain point, with all this huge amount of money coming through, we really would like to see some of it trickle in and have some serious work done on at least the parks, and then move. Grateful about the roads, grateful about the sidewalks. We hear about it, we just hope it all happens the way you're saying it's going to happen.
Oh,
We
it's
certainly
coming.
support that. I know you've worked hard. I know
You'll be cursing us when the entire neighborhood is under construction.
That is, that has been a priority since day one.
So, and I know that you know that the Senate organization has always had teeth in the, what do they call that? Teeth in the.
Skin in the game.
Skin in the game, whatever. So we have for 20+ years now.
I mean, sometimes you
And
lose
so-
teeth in the game, but
Yeah, so, all right, thank you very much.
Matt, do we have any potential plans for these other facilities that Paula mentioned?
Yeah, we do, Eric. We had an assessment done this spring from a playground professional. So we had all of our parks, our playgrounds rather, surveyed. And what I had asked him to do when he came was just to assess what we have now and give me a ballpark number on what it would take for a replacement for like features. So we do have numbers. It wouldn't take much. I'm very encouraged to hear this discussion, obviously. But yeah, we do have numbers for replacing playground features in those parks that Paula mentioned.
and my dog runs.
Possibly.
Okay, so Jay is taking my first thing. So Anna Holdener, South End resident, and as the chair of the South End Neighborhood Association, I know that we've actually been speaking with Matt quite a bit about some of the things that our parks need, anything from basic maintenance to some things that that we'd like to see added to the parks, such as maybe a trial dog run, not a dog park, a dog run. So we kind of hashed out some ideas about things to pitch to the Recreation Committee, and we are hoping that that we'd like to open up some dialogue, because our parks are used regularly. They're used regularly not just by South End residents, but people come from all around town for it. There's a regular basketball game that happens at least once a weekend down on our courts, which definitely needs to get repainted if not resurfaced. We have the playground equipment that is, you know, like Paula said, we'll definitely take a hand-me-down because it's probably newer than the stuff that's there right now. Picnic tables, kids come down for picnics, families come down for picnics. Moore Street Playground, I've talked a lot about that with Matt, and we've kicked around some ideas that of what could be possible and what could be pitched to the committee. But overall, you know, our parks are the heart and soul. You know, folks are always talking about wanting more green spaces. Well, we have them. Let's invest in them.
And we have the Kennebec. It runs right through. It's a wonderful place to open up to the Kennebec, clean up some of the brush that's there, that's just junk brush anyway, and just open that up. It's amazing how gorgeous that is. And my last pitch, and Matt has known this for 4 years, is my volleyball court, because I really believe that would attract, especially where we have Kobe students up on the hill, on the main street now, and we want to be able to attract a variety of people so that they can see. I know. I have to pitch it. Okay. And so the volleyball court was a big deal, something that I really think you can have all different age groups playing and doing something over there with that. So that's about it.
And one of the other parks that is lesser known is Kuchar Field that Paula mentioned. It is where there's a softball field. There's a parking lot that often the KV Cap van drivers will go and park and have their lunch. There's also a boat landing down there with some picnic tables and pavilions. It's when I do the South End neighborhood tours, walking tours, it's kind of one of the hot spots because it does give a beautiful view of the river. And most people don't know that we have a boat landing or a boat launch right there in the South End. Yep, Parks and Rec and Public Works does a great job with the boat landing. And those facilities down there are just kind of a hidden gem.
Thank you. Regan, you got anything? I mean, now's your chance. We're talking about
Loaded
it.
question at 9:10 at night.
Yeah, we're done.
Grab the mic.
I will say,
Get the mic.
In terms of Green Street, we've spent quite a lot of private capital in terms of making improvements to the park. One thing that we could use is some roofing over the new children's stage, along with some seating. We're putting in 3 benches in the park, but there's really just nowhere for caregivers who bring children to kind of sit. There's 1 bench. We're putting 3 in. We're talking we'll be able to have like 7 people sit down. And I believe Matt would have the numbers, but I think a BMX pad at the current skate park would be cheaper than an actual skate park. So I will toss that out there as well.
Thank you. Clepac, are you raising your hand to speak?
No, I'm dealing with the runny nose here, man. I'm good.
All right. You better catch it.
Yeah.
All right. Next. That it? That's it. And one more subject was the, we didn't get a chance to talk about it with the ARPA funds, but Operation Hope. Making sure that they get money ahead of time.
We have Operation Hope, and we also have one piece that I forgot when it came to the ARPA funds, and that was the unrealized revenue aspect. That's an eligible use of that money, and our finance director is here tonight to talk to you about that. Which do you want to go first?
We'll go with Chief first so we can get out of here. Poor guy's been sitting around.
Well, Operation Hope is certainly an important program to us in the community. And since its implementation back in 2017, it's really exceeded our expectation in helping those who suffer from substance abuse. So as you all know, I've said it many times that it is supported by fundraisers and events and those types of things. We just did a golf tournament that raised $12,000. So to sustain that program has been challenging, to say the least. We've had to cancel some of our concerts and other fundraising events as a result of COVID, so we took a pretty big hit on the financial part of it. And it's just helped so many people, and we say it's, providing one recovery at a time, and that's how we measure that program. It's giving people back their lives, becoming a mom and a dad again, getting a job. And that's really the solution, the long-term solutions to substance abuse is treatment. We're not going to arrest our way out of this, and that's why that program is so critical to not just Waterville, which I envisioned when we first implemented that program, that it would mainly serve Waterville people, but it's really extended throughout the whole state because it's been so successful. And so we've put through so many people. Some of them have got their life back together and have come before council and given great testimonies of they're alive today because of Operation Hope. So we hope to continue it. Hopefully this funds, if the council see fit, is to help fund Operation Hope and continue to move forward with it. We have an AmeriCorps volunteer whose main focus is capacity building, and that's what we're trying to do with that program. One of the components we're kind of missing is the outreach portion of it, where we know that for every person that walks into the police department, there's dozens more out there that we never see because we can't reach them. So great program. It really needs that funding piece to sustain it, and we've been able to do that right from day one. So that's been pretty amazing. I mean, we've taken off our hats and put on a different one completely when we get into our fundraising mode, and something simply that's outside of what we obviously normally provide as a police department. But we realize we got to do that. It's good for those people, obviously, who are able to access Operation Hope, but it's good for our community. And we need to work with our community partners. That's going to be so important moving forward. Substance abuse, mental health, they all go hand in hand here. Many of those people who suffer from substance abuse are homeless. So we've got to attack it on a number of fronts and with the help of our community partners.
Speaking of mental health, and Claude, we had gone back and forth with some emails and we had discussed some of it, but a mental health officer,
and I know that you were in on that discussion.
I'm sorry, what was that?
The mental health officer, we were talking about
Yes.
bringing on someone else, especially in light of what happened in Augusta.
Yes, at one time, we did have a mental health worker that rode with our patrol officers to provide that mental health services at street level. And that's where you really need it. When people are in their darkest moment and they're having a crisis on the street, it's not a time to be telling them that they need to go get counseling at someplace else. You need to deliver those services right there, because that's the critical time. And so, again, we got to have mental health and substance abuse people with boots on the ground with us. And that's, to me, is the most effective approach, because you provide those services for them right there. This mental health worker was able to do follow-up, which is critical. Many of those people, you can give them resources, you can give them a card, you can direct them where to go, and if you're not there to walk with them, they're not going to do it.
They're not gonna do it.
I mean, they are fighting a pretty significant addiction that's just overpowering for them.
Thank you, Chief.
Wait, I have
Oh.
a question.
Good.
When you're talking about the mental health officer, are you talking about a mental health, like, worker riding along, or are you talking about, like they have in Oregon, where it's an actual police officer who has also, like, he carries a social work, either degree or training? Like, what part of that has been in these discussions? That might actually be a question for Claude more than
Right.
Chief.
Well, I can tell you that our mental health worker was licensed under crisis and counseling. So they were a licensed mental health worker with a background in social services.
So, but it wasn't a police officer?
It was not a police officer. We made efforts not to have the officer do that, so that the officer could make the scene safe, step back, and let a professional step forward and provide those services. And furthermore, to do that follow-up work that's so much needed if you're going to be successful.
There's a successful program in Oregon where they do actually take police officers and give them social work training. And then-
Rian, we can't hear you. We gotta get him a microphone.
or I can just come up.
Thank you, Rian.
There's a very successful program in Oregon. I'm not sure exactly which municipality. I wasn't prepared to talk about this tonight. But essentially what it does is it takes police officers and gives them social work training, instead of having a social worker themselves who has no police training, kind of no safety training, none of that, go along on the calls, and I can definitely get that information. And so that was really the basis of my question, is when we're talking about having a social worker, are we talking about training police officers to have social work training, or are we talking about having, a social worker do ride-alongs with the police?
I think at this point, we're starting the conversation and realizing that we have a need. How we fill that need is going to evolve over time, and it'll be, I know we'll get there. Claude, go ahead.
I just, a nuts and bolts question for the chief. How quickly do you think you could put a program like this in place? And is that something that we should think about authorizing money for immediately from the ARPA funds?
I certainly think it's a worthwhile position, and the fact that we've put the program together before with the help of crisis and counseling when we hired our first mental health worker, I think has done a lot of the work for us, Counselor. So I don't envision that it would be a long process. One of the components of that was cross-training the officers and the mental health workers so that they understood each other's role, because what we experienced, that one of the quickest things to fail this program was not to understand each other's roles. And so we did some cross-training there, but I think we could put that program together fairly quickly. And it certainly it was a very well-worth program that, provided so many services to those folks with mental illness. So I'd like to see it come back, absolutely.
We'd like to see you get it, Chief. Any other questions for Chief? Thank you, sir. Steve?
There is one other item having to do with the unrealized revenue during the COVID period. And Aaron Burrows, our finance director, will give you an overview on that.
I don't know if we should let him. He didn't bring us any pizza.
Hi, folks. I want to bring up 2 points. There is approximately $334,000 in lost revenue, budget over actual, and $72,000 of existing COVID expenses that haven't been reimbursed through funds and grants. And between those two, they fall under the ARPA funds.
What were they? The exact breakdown.
The exact breakdown is the 334 is just department by department between budget, budget to actual loss, and 72,000 again is the combination of all the COVID expenses that haven't been reimbursed.
Is that like general assistance, putting people up in hotels and?
No, that's actually covered. The state actually covers those pieces, but it's personnel and other costs related since the inception of the COVID crisis.
Do you have anything to say on that? Anybody have any questions for Aaron?
Do we have that breakdown in here?
I can.
Can you get that to us?
Yeah, I could get that breakdown to you.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Aaron.
All right, thank you.
Anything else? All right.
Just
So
to-
my question.
Go
I got a
ahead.
question. So what he's saying is that because of the lost funds, we can use the ARPA funds to pay for these things.
To pay ourselves back.
Okay, sounds
Yeah,
good.
if we decide to do so.
Okay.
Good.
Well, and so all of this is discussion that the finance committee will be having, one about the bond, given what we heard tonight, and then also potentially, I know we have a committee for the ARPA funds, but there are some things we've discussed, just going ahead and taking action as a council, and then having the committee deal with the rest of the money. And so I think the finance committee will probably be coming up with some recommendations on those things for discussion. I think the plan, I believe, is to have a public hearing before the next council meeting about the bond, and then potentially take a first vote on the bond at the next meeting, and then we'd need a second vote at the next meeting in November if we're ready at that point. And then also potentially start taking some action on some of these things, potential uses for the ARPA funds that we discussed this evening.
Anyone else? All right, moving on to councilor updates.
I got one.
Good.
I don't want to go into too many details, but Steve and I, with Garvin Donegan, interviewed a candidate for the position that we funded at the Growth Council last week. He was a very qualified candidate, and I believe he has accepted the position. I don't want to name names because I'm not sure who he's had a chance to tell yet, but I do believe that we found somebody who's going to be a great member of the team. He has a lot of technical knowledge about zoning, and he previously worked at the state level, so he knows all about navigating those roadblocks. So hopefully we'll be telling you more about that soon.
Anyone else? Councilor Green?
Yeah, I just wanted to let everyone know that the Housing Committee is hosting a conference on December 7th to discuss housing issues in Waterville. This is a chance for people to come and discuss issues across the board, from homelessness to the need for market rate housing. And so this will be at the Elm. It's 8 to 4 on December 7th. We'll be sending out information about registering. The event, I believe, will be free of charge, but registration will be required, and there will be limited it'll be limited to 75 people. So please mark your calendars and save the date, spread the word. We're hoping for a good turnout and a lively discussion. Thank you.
Any other counselor updates? All right, moving on to community notes. No community notes?
That's a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Set.